You won't believe what my HOA president Karen tried to pull on my family. She wasn't content with her usual petty fines or nasty letters. This time she brought in backup. Not real backup, though. She actually called in a crew of fake cops to harass my wife. Big mistake. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Here's how it started. My wife had become Karen's favorite target ever since we moved into the neighborhood. Karen didn't like her independence, her confidence, or the fact that she never bowed down to her so-called HOA rules. She nitpicked everything: our flower pots, the car we parked on the street, even the jogging route my wife took in the mornings. But this latest stunt, it crossed a line. One Friday afternoon, while I was still at work, my wife called me sounding both calm and irritated, an odd mix I knew meant trouble. She said 3 men had shown up at our door wearing cheap, mismatched uniforms that looked like they came from a thrift store costume rack. They flashed fake-looking badges and claimed they were with HOA enforcement. My wife knew instantly this had Karen's fingerprints all over it. These so-called officers started questioning her about our recycling bins, our fence height, and even the color of our curtains. None of it made sense because none of it was their business. But my wife, being sharp as ever, didn't flinch. She told them they had no jurisdiction, no authority, and no legal grounds to be standing on our property. One of them, the tall one with sunglasses, smirked and said, "We're here under orders from the president. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be." The president. That was Karen. No doubt about it. My wife later told me she almost laughed right then, because here's what Karen didn't know. My wife isn't just tough, she's highly trained. She worked for the CIA before we ever settled into this quiet neighborhood. She had been in situations these wannabe enforcers couldn't even imagine, and instead of being intimidated, she was already planning her response. The fake cops tried crowding her on our porch, using intimidation tactics they probably copied from some TV show. But that was their first mistake. My wife gave them one last warning to back off, then stepped down the porch steps with a look that told them they were about to regret every choice they'd made that day. And Karen, she was watching from across the street, arms full, probably expecting my wife to crumble. She had no clue she had just lit the fuse on her own humiliation. The 3 fake cops weren't used to anyone standing their ground, much less a woman who looked calm and completely unshaken. One of them, the stocky guy with the buzz cut, stepped closer and jabbed a finger toward my wife's chest. "Ma'am," he barked, "if you don't comply, we'll have to write you up for obstruction of HOA enforcement. That's a serious violation." My wife tilted her head and gave him a half smile. "Obstruction of what? Last I checked, the only people allowed to write citations wear real badges and swear oaths to the law. You 3 are just playing dress up." That jab cut deep, and I could picture Karen fuming across the street. This was supposed to be her power play, but instead, my wife was making her enforcers look ridiculous. The tall one in sunglasses decided to escalate. He stepped forward, trying to loom over her, and said, "You think this is a joke? We can take you down to the station right now." My wife laughed outright. "Station? Let me guess. It's in Karen's garage?" That's when things got physical. The stocky one reached out, trying to grab her wrist. What he didn't know was that he had just given my wife all the excuse she needed. In one smooth motion, she twisted his arm, dropped her weight, and flipped him onto the grass. He landed flat on his back with a grunt loud enough for Karen to hear. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The other 2 froze in shock. They weren't expecting resistance, certainly not a takedown executed with military precision. My wife didn't stop there. When Sunglasses lunged, she sidestepped, hooked his arm, and sent him stumbling face first into the porch railing. His fake badge clattered onto the steps. The third one looked torn between helping his buddies or running. My wife turned to him and said, "Cool as ever, you've got about 3 seconds to leave before I show you why intimidation games don't work on me." The man didn't move, but Karen suddenly shouted from across the street, "Don't you dare back down! Arrest her! Arrest her!" from Karen's lawn chair command post. The arrogance was unreal. Instead, the third guy hesitated just a second too long. My wife closed the distance, grabbed the front of his vest, and shoved him backward off the porch. He tumbled into the flower bed, cursing and spitting dirt. By now, neighbors were peeking out of windows, phones in hand. The scene looked absurd. 3 grown men in fake uniforms sprawled across our yard while my wife stood there like she was just finishing a warm-up exercise. And Karen? She was no longer yelling. She was staring, her smug grin wiped clean. For the first time, I think she realized she wasn't dealing with just another neighbor she could bully, but she didn't know the half of it, because the real trouble for her and her fake cops was about to start when the actual sheriff's deputies showed up. Blue and red lights cut across the street as two real sheriff's cruisers screeched up. Neighbors poured onto their porches, phones up, recording every second. The fake officers tried scrambling to their feet, brushing off their knockoff uniforms, but it was too late. The real law had arrived. The deputies stepped out, hands resting on their duty belts, scanning the scene. One of them narrowed his eyes immediately. "What in the hell am I looking at?" My wife folded her arms, calm as a lake. "3 impersonators hired by that woman," she said, nodding toward Karen, who was now clutching her phone like a lifeline. Karen exploded before anyone else could speak. "Don't listen to her. These men are here on HOA business. She assaulted them. Arrest her now!" The deputies looked from Karen to the groaning men on the lawn, then back to my wife, who hadn't even broken a sweat. One deputy shook his head. "Lady, impersonating an officer is a felony. These guys aren't from any department I know." The tallest of the fake cops stammered, "We were just trying to enforce the HOA code." "Code?" The deputy cut him off. "Son, the only code you just broke is Title 18, Section 912, impersonating a federal officer. That's 5 years prison time right there." Karen's jaw dropped. No, no, no. You don't understand. I authorized this. I'm the HOA president. We can do this." That's when my wife decided it was time. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a slim black wallet, and flipped it open. Inside gleamed an identification card that made both deputies instantly stand straighter. "Special agent," the deputy muttered, reading. His tone shifted to respect. Karen's face went pale. "Agent? Agent of what?" My wife met her eyes, voice cold as steel. "CIA Counterintelligence Division. And congratulations, Karen, you just orchestrated a federal crime on your own street." The crowd gasped, phones angled higher. Karen stumbled back, waving her arms. "This is insane! She's lying! You people can't just believe her." But the deputies already had the fake cops cuffed and lined up. My wife handed over their bogus IDs, each one marked with laughably fake logos. "Evidence," she said crisply. One deputy turned to me. "Do you want to press charges against Karen too? Soliciting impersonation, harassment, conspiracy, it all sticks." I didn't hesitate. Every single charge available. The sound Karen made wasn't even words. It was a shriek. She tried to run, but 2 neighbors stepped in front of her, blocking the way until the deputies moved to cuff her as well. As Karen was shoved into the back of a squad car, she screamed, "This neighborhood belongs to me! You can't do this!" But no one listened. The neighbors cheered, phones recording the whole thing. Karen's reign of terror had finally ended, undone by her own arrogance. And the best part, she never saw it coming, because the quiet woman she thought she could bully turned out to be the one person she should have feared most, a CIA agent. So tell me, what do you think Karen's punishment should be for unleashing fake cops on her own neighbors? The end.